If you think we're going to advocate to hashtag release the Snyder Cut, then you're listening to the wrong superhero related podcast. Tonight, we review the Snyder cut of Justice League.
We have to be ready. You, me, the others. There's an attack coming from far away.
Not coming, Bruce. It's already here. The others. Where are they?
Arthur Curry, the Aquaman. It's on him.
Organic and biomechatronic body parts. He's a cyborg.
You should probably move. Barry Allen.
Whoever you're looking for, it's not me. You're the Batman?
They said the age of heroes would never come again.
It has to.
This is the Superhero Pantheon. On this podcast, we take one superhero film a week and decide whether it should be in the Pantheon, the pile of shame, or somewhere in between. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps through The Real World. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5-star review so as to help people discover this show and the great work that the folks at The Real World are doing. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you could do so in two ways. First, send an email to superheropantheon@gmail.com. Second, find us on Twitter at HeroPantheon. My co-host for this week and every week will be Brian DeBrain. He can be found on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. And Brian, there is a great deal of controversy surrounding this film because everybody wants to hashtag release the Snyder Cut. And as I said in the open, this is not the podcast where we are going to advocate for that. And quite frankly, anyone who unironically tweets that to us is going to be blocked this week. So I'm ready to throw a block party, Brian.
Listen, I don't even think that cut exists, to be honest, okay? Because, the only reason it even came up was where their boy Kevin Smith on his podcast bringing it up saying, I want to see what Snyder came up with. You know what I mean? I wanted to see his vision. He brought that up, and then it became this thing where it became this quote-unquote Snyder cut that probably doesn't even exist, because if it did, they would have released it by now, because they have no reason not to. All you missed was a black suit, and that's pretty much it. And that's all the Snyder cut stuff we need to talk about, because it really doesn't exist.
There are a lot of shots that were in the original trailer that are certainly not in the movie itself, including a bunch of stuff with Cyborg, apparently. But what you have here is you have a weird mishmash of Zack Snyder, Joss Whedon, and whatever the Warner Brothers executives wanted to do. The intention was, according to Zack Snyder, that this movie would be very different than Batman vs. Superman. There was a time when Warner Brothers invited journalists and bloggers to visit the set. Zack Snyder also stated it was going to have a shorter runtime too. And I guess for me, this is something that I've been thinking about, because I personally do not like Batman vs. Superman. I detest Suicide Squad. I'm not a big fan of Man of Steel. But I look at the box office of Suicide Squad. I look at the box office of Batman vs. Superman. And I think, why is Warner Brothers making these choices to have the shorter runtime, to do these different things, when there's been almost no evidence to indicate that these movies are complete financial disasters? I mean, certainly from a critical perspective, they have not done well. These are movies that are in the 20s and 30s on Rotten Tomatoes, but the Transformers movies are not popular among critics either, and Michael Bay never once changed his vision for those movies. And the first 4 of those movies are some of the most successful movies of all time, and probably the most critically acclaimed of the Transformers movies, which is Bumblebee, is also the one that made the least amount of money. So I guess I'm trying to figure out here in this run of podcasts that we're doing, what is Warner Brothers doing?
I think they're just trying to find excuses and just reasons as to why the critics didn't like it, and maybe they think a shorter running time would have helped for Batman versus Superman, which maybe it probably should have. I mean, it definitely should have, but I don't know. I just think they're trying to make up all these reasons to fix all these problems from the first one, or actually technically the second one. But it just, I think they're just meaningless because in the end, it's just no matter how long the movie is, you got no matter what story you're telling, you need to give it the right amount of time, whether it's 2 hours and 10 minutes, an hour and 58 minutes. And we've always discussed on here, movies going way too long and cutting things out. But here it was just like, it felt like it was kind of short anyway, and there's all this missing stuff. So this idea that it had to be shorter, I think it was just bullshit. I think what really happened is that they ran out of footage and they had to like fill it in, and they barely got the 2 hours. That's really what I think because they did cut out a lot, but the stuff they cut out probably was not even that good, worthy of being in the movie.
Well, there was a lot of stuff that presumably was going to lead into a second part because this movie originally was intended to be split into two parts, and I think that is what something that happened in Batman vs Superman, where we see the Flash come from the future. I think that's what they were alluding to is this idea that this is going to be two parts, and there was going to be some sort of a singular continuing storyline, first with Steppenwolf and then Darkseid being introduced. Justice League Part 1 and Part 2 seem to have quietly gone away, though, and it is now rumored to be two self-contained movies, but we are never going to see a second Justice League movie, at least in this iteration, with a lot of this cast and with some of these directors. And you mentioned some of the issues. One of them is very unfortunate, and it's difficult to talk about this because we have not been very kind, especially me. I have not been very kind to Zack Snyder as an artist. But the reasons that he had to step away from this film with his producer wife Deborah Snyder is terribly unfortunate, and it's really crappy that this is what happened because it's awful. I mean, no parent should have to bury their daughter, and that's what they had to do as their daughter committed suicide in March of 2017. And at first they did try to remain on the film as a way to work through the difficulties, but they decided after a couple months that they needed to step away from the project to spend time with their family. And it is only now in 2019 that Zack Snyder is returning to directing. I believe he is directing a Netflix project. And Joss Whedon, who had signed on for Batgirl, took over as director. Of course, he also had a lot to do with bringing the Avengers to the screen. He managed additional several scenes that need to be included in the final cut. Warner Brothers have stated that Joss would direct and write in the same style as Zack, so there wouldn't be any tonal shifts or obvious changes in style. I do not believe that for a second, and we'll get to why as we get into the categories. Wynn did make a decision, though, in firing the composer, Junkie XL. Junkie XL participated on Batman vs. Superman along with Hans Zimmer, and in this case he replaced him with Danny Elfman. And Brian, you could tell that the score for this just is very different, and honestly, it tonally doesn't work.
Yeah, it becomes totally like normal, like prototypical, and I can't believe he reused some of like the Batman themes from like the '89 and '91 Batman Returns stuff. I just couldn't believe he did that, and like I feel like that's the wrong thing to do because it's the wrong universe, and it's like something you don't want to even bring in. Like the tone was completely different. It felt weird, and you could tell like they had these Danny Elfman moments, even though I think the only good parts of the score are probably with like the Flash, like that's, but it's still very Danny Elfmanish, and I know that's it's like a weird term, but Family Guy also makes fun of it. It's like this. Whenever you hear a score, you can kind of tell it's Danny Elfman, and it just doesn't fit what they were going for in this movie. And I think I know why they fired Junkie XL. I think they just wanted to get rid of that sound, that dark, thematic sound that was all over Batman vs Superman. They wanted to lighten the tone up, and of course, Danny Elfman is someone that can definitely lighten the tone up in a dark kind of cinematic world, right? Like Beetlejuice and all that kind of thing, right? So I get what they were going for, but it just didn't fit.
And it's weird because I certainly have my issues with Man of Steel, but I really like the score for Man of Steel, and the fact that it didn't play in certain key moments, and you got the Superman 1978 score was really weird, and you totally stole my thunder on the Family Guy because I was going to talk about it when we got to the technical part. But there is this joke in Family Guy when they parodied Star Wars that George or John Williams was killed by the Jawas or the stormtroopers in the parody, and that the movie would be or the show would be finished by Danny Elfman. And in this case, you had Danny Elfman using part of a John Williams score, and that's all I could think about when I first saw this movie in theaters. And it was a good chuckle, but it made no sense.
Yeah, I just feel like they just trying to relive parts of the past that worked, and this is one of those decisions because they were scrambling to finish the movie, and it just doesn't fit and it doesn't work. And I appreciate what Whedon was trying to do, like trying to take this tone, this dark tone that people were not liking from the previous movie, and trying to fix that tone in a quick situation where he had like 6 months to finish the movie practically, and it was too rushed, and a decision like that it doesn't work. I would have just stuck with Junkie XL and just stuck with those themes because those were probably the better parts of Batman vs Superman anyway. Was that soundtrack?
Well, and part of what makes the story and the journey of Justice League so fascinating is way back in 2007, 9 months before the MCU started, George Miller of Mad Max fame, including perhaps making one of the best movies of the decade, Mad Max Fury Road, which is a phenomenal piece of filmmaking. He had a Justice League movie cast. And some of these are people that you probably have never heard of, but I would love to see what George Miller would have done with a Justice League movie. I don't know if it would have been good, but based on what I saw in Fury Road, even though George Miller is 100 years old, it would have been something very, very different.
I remember this news at the time, just being like totally blown away. But not being introduced to this concept of the MCU where you introduce one character at a time and then create the big team up movie. Just seeing a team up movie introduced out of nowhere just totally just took me by surprise. And just reading about it and then seeing it fall apart in front of my eyes, reading article month after month about having it fall apart. It just sucks, man, because I think they were gonna shoot it in Australia or something like that, and that was the big plan. And like, I wasn't even that aware of like the Mad Max movies at the time, like 2007ish. I really didn't watch like the Mad Maxes until later on. So for me, I wasn't too intrigued. But after watching, Fury Road all those years later, and just seeing how he can do things technically, practically, like especially the visual effects, like I couldn't really imagine the colors and the color scheme he would have came up with for that movie. So it sucks because I know at the time too, like they were even throwing his name to replace him, right? At this point, I remember hearing that name as one of the replacements, but then Joss Whedon kind of came in, or I don't know if it was like the same time they announced Joss Whedon or whatever, but I do remember hearing George Miller kind of taking over, or even doing another Justice League movie after this one for that part two that they kind of were teasing here, but they never got to.
So there were a lot of reshoots for this movie to the point where it added $25 million to the budget. And the funniest part of that is that Henry Cavill, he was working on Mission Impossible Fallout at the time. He was wearing a mustache for the role in that project, and Paramount refused to let the actor shave it off for the time he played Superman again. This meant that Cavill's facial hair had to be digitally removed in post-production. I cannot in this movie find a single scene where Cavill's facial hair is not easily identifiable. I don't know about you, but it looks weird.
Especially in the beginning when they had that scene with the kid and the cell phone video. Even that scene was like completely unnecessary, but it was just so obvious. And right off the bat, I thought that's not the scene you start out with because immediately everyone's gonna be thinking about his goddamn mustache, and you just started off like that.
Well, the scene itself is fine from a content standpoint. I like what they were doing there because they were
Me too, but I mean, it's just so obvious that it just throws the audience off because the audience knows what the fuck happened with the mustache story. So for me, it was just like that's the wrong move because it totally distracts the audience right off the bat, and it's just such bullshit. Because I think it would have just been easier to just shave it off and then give him the fake mustache again. But just it's more, movie executives being dicks to each other and just totally ridiculous stuff. But I mean, it's stupid and fuck, man. It wasn't even that important to have a mustache on the guy anyway in the Mission Impossible movie because the movie was been the same anyway, with or without that goddamn mustache. So it was just so frustrating reading that article and the whole thing going down. I'm just like, this is some stupid Hollywood bullshit between some Hollywood executives that are just bickering with each other, trying to one up each other, and then we as the audience have to suffer staring at the CGI digital mustache being clearly there but having to be airbrushed out. It was just so stupid.
Right, and unfortunately, a byproduct of this big cut down was that Cyborg, who apparently was meant to be the heart of the film, who had not gotten his own solo film, so it makes sense to have some scenes where he gets to develop his character a little bit. Unfortunately, many of those scenes were cut, and Cyborg is just a walking monotone monster for most of this movie. He's an aluminum can, is what he is, and it sucks.
It does suck. And listen, I mean, I was kind of sympathetic to the character the first time I saw the movie in theaters, but just looking back now, it just they only use him to further the plot for the Steppenwolf stuff. That's the only reason he's there. It's like he's there because he was created by the Mother Box, sort of, and then he's there to pull him apart. And that's the reason he's there. He's just there for the Mother Boxes. He's not there to kind of be his own kind of character. It didn't feel like it. They tried, but it didn't work, and it sucks because I just feel like he was totally unnecessary by the end of the movie. If you just ignore that Mother Box shit, he would have just been just another character. I don't know. It didn't fit, and it just felt like he was just shoehorned in there, and it would have been fine with just the main five, and then or the main four until they get Superman at the end. But it would have just been better with the main five at the end instead of six.
They were clearly going for something very specific, and there is this rumor of a Snyder cut. And I think Zack Snyder himself has not helped this because he has posted concept art relating to Darkseid in the original film. He has talked about the existence of a cut in March 2019, whether that's true or not. I just I think he has not helped this situation with some of his comments. He's made comments about Batman and Superman that I think just show that he fundamentally misunderstands these characters. And I really think, despite the fact that, again, there's been some success, I'm really glad Zack Snyder has nothing to do with the DCU at this point. I think that this franchise as a whole is in much better hands with your Patty Jenkins, with your James Wans, and even with your Ava DuVernays.
Yeah, I feel bad for the whole situation that he went through by the end of it, but he's just got to step away. And we've kind of discussed this about his storytelling ability. Um, Visually he's there. Like he's definitely that art student that he's one of those. I forget what college now, California, but very, very famous art school that he went to. So that's where you get that visual kind of style from, which is great because it fits the comic book style. The problem is he doesn't have that storytelling ability, and you can kind of see that with like these random scenes at the beginning of this movie where it's like, yeah, we see Wonder Woman kicking ass, but we have no idea why there's this terrorist organization trying to blow up 4 blocks. There's these random just scenes, like the scene with the kids in the family in the town. It's just like I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to do, and they were trying to finish. It felt like they said, "Hey, we're not giving you a second movie, so we're not going to film all these extra scenes. So take the scenes that you do have, make it into one narrative." And then the shit happened where he left, and then they had to bring in Joss Whedon to finish it. So it's just such a mess that I felt like they should have just delayed the movie till spring of next year in 2018, which may have been a mistake probably because they were trying to avoid the Avengers. So I don't know. They just kind of booked themselves into a corner.
Well, apparently one of the reasons that this came out when it did is because the Warner Brothers got some sort of a bonus for releasing the Justice League when they did. And if there's ever a reason to release a movie, it's so that these million-dollar executives can get their bonuses.
Yes, so us as the fans can, you know, be in the rewards, and it's just it sucks hearing that when you told me that just now.
Did you realize there was a post-credit scene? Not the one with Superman and the Flash, but with Deathstroke and Lex Luthor?
Yeah, and I was like, shit, that should have been the movie. It should have been the Legion of Doom versus the Justice League first, and then you build up this big alien invasion. But of course, they went backwards because basically, I've realized that this movie is just like a quick rehash of like Avengers 1 and 2 combined, where you throw in the Justice League instead, and Sokovia instead of the random Russian town, which I think they're trying to say is Chernobyl, but I think they didn't officially say that.
And they don't know how radiation works because they're trying to move 30 years after. And as we all learned from Chernobyl, you cannot live in a place that has basically been nuked for 20,000 years.
But yeah, pretty much, and you got people living on the outskirts of town, so more crazy writing flaws, but we'll get to that in the score. But yeah,
Which is ironic because Chernobyl was on HBO, and what is the studio that is behind these movies is Warner Brothers, which also is affiliated with HBO. Great, great stuff.
yeah, you see where we're getting at, people? Rushed bullshit, and it suffers with the audience, and we get to,
I mean, there were times here when some of the writing and some of the plotting and some of the dialogue, I mean, it felt like this was the Justice League animated series at times, and even the moments when there was a romance tease between Batman and Wonder Woman, I'm like, this is totally the animated series. This is not even a movie.
See, I get that vibe too, and I think that's what they were trying to go for because there is like a great chemistry that there is in the Justice League 2001 series, leading into Justice League Unlimited. I'm a big fan of that, but it's not a cinematic tone; it's a TV cartoon tone. So they just didn't know what kind of tone they were trying to do. They were trying to. It did feel like they were just trying to do like a quick 90-minute Justice League animated movie and then have like 20 minutes of filler footage, right? And that's what it felt like by the end. And I mean, yeah, you could do that, but I mean, you need a fully thought out arc, not just like this bullshit where we're gonna bring in Steppenwolf when you probably should have just brought in Darkseid anyway if you knew you were gonna have half a movie or a movie taken away from you. So, just all this stuff combined, it's just a bad situation.
And I would like to point out that despite everything we've just said, I still think I would rather watch this than any of the three previous movies. And I think the fact that Brian is coming across so much more negative this time is why this movie is probably going to get pissed on a lot more than Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman, because Brian likes those two movies for whatever reason, and he clearly does not like this movie.
I mean, listen, it's cool that I got to team up, and that's the moments I want. But I just feel like by the end, like I'm just watching Age of Ultron. By the end of it, so I don't know.
I think Age of Ultron, that movie has way more ideas than this one does. And if nothing else, there are things that happen in Ultron that got paid off in later movies that I think Ultron's existence has almost been justified in a way.
Right, it just feels like the end of the movie is just like Sokovia all over again. But we'll see. Because like I think my highest score, you'll be surprised at, but that's just because I got to see all my favorites on the screen at the same time.
All right, let's talk about the heroes. Everyone is kind of a misanthrope again. You get that because it's Zack Snyder, but they're a lot more quippy because of Joss Whedon and Chris Terrio, who is also a credited screenwriter here. You could definitely tell that they are going for a different tone. Batman is not branding people. But I think for me, this is a sequel to films that don't exist. One where Superman was a beacon of hope, and his death has opened up the world to outside forces. I don't understand this world. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But at the very least, Superman, once he wakes up and stops trying to hurt his friends, Superman is actually smiling. He's happy. He's quippy. Batman is not branding people. So I think that's good. I think the way that Batman and Superman are portrayed, look, it's not consistent, but it is certainly much more watchable for me.
I got that vibe too. But the problem is like Superman has like these dull, lines at the end of the third act when they bring him back and he's trying to be, I'm glad I'm alive. I don't want to die. Blah blah blah. And I thought, that doesn't sound. It sounds forced. That sounded like WWE scripted stuff right there. And I thought, I don't know, his dialogue didn't feel as natural as it did in the first two movies. But that's just me. But I do enjoy my Batman, Ben Affleck. He's one of my favorite Bruce Waynes. Clearly, he's getting old, and they talk about that in this movie, and they kind of tease that relationship with Diana like they do in the show, so that was kind of cool. Um, it's just weird because I was so hyped for this post because this was like what 3 months after Wonder Woman, right? And Wonder Woman came out that June. This was November, so I was hyped and hoping that they were going to build on this Wonder Woman character, but it felt like they regressed here. And then you kind of think about it, and I think I get it that because she's aged 100 years or so, she's her personality changes. She's not as naive as she was in Wonder Woman because she's not, freshly, brought into the world or whatever. So I get that. So here she's kind of like I get the pining thing for Steve Trevor and all that, but
I hated it. I thought it was awful.
I get this feeling though. I get this feeling though that there's more to that, and we're gonna find out more of that in the. I think there's more of that story in the Wonder Woman 2 story as to why, and then that's why like Steve Trevor's technically back, and Chris Pine is technically back in Wonder Woman 2. So we'll see about that. I think there's more to that story. So I think there's more to that, but and then of course we got Cyborg, who is what I don't know. Like I said, he's just there to kind of further that Steppenwolf stuff, and doesn't really work on his own. I think in this movie.
I hated it. I thought it was awful. Well, I think one of the issues is that when you only have essentially two female characters in this movie. I know that Martha Kent is involved, but basically you have Lois Lane and Wonder Woman. They're the only two speaking roles for females, and they're both pining after dudes the whole time. That is not what a good movie makes, and especially because I think Wonder Woman set the expectation so high. There were a lot of moments in this movie where it just felt like Wonder Woman was either pining over Steve Trevor. There were gratuitous male gazy ass shots. I don't know, man. It was really bad, and it was kind of gross because when you think about it, you've got Joss Whedon, who there have been accusations about as far as cheating on his wife. You've got the fact that Brett Ratner is a producer on this movie, and it was his production company behind it, and we all know what a pig he was, and Gal Gadot basically forced him off of all Warner Brothers projects. And you've also got Zack Snyder, whose treatment of women isn't exactly great either. So you've got all that, and I think that really affects the portrayal of Wonder Woman, and it is no wonder that she is not portrayed very well here. And you've also got Aquaman. He is super broy in this movie. I think his best moment is the Lasso of Truth moment. That is apparently a Joss Whedon edition because he shows vulnerability, and I think that allowed Aquaman to be a better character and set up the solo film. To me, I think Jason Momoa turns it down 10% between this movie and Aquaman, and it makes all the difference in the world as to why I think he's much more likable in his solo movie than he is here. Because here he is just unlikable, and there's the joke about when he says "my man" and things like that. And again, he turns that down 10%, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I get the story they're kind of telling. Like, I mean, at first when I saw him in the movie, I thought, is the Aquaman movie going to be a prequel then? Because he's already established, blah blah blah. But then you find out that he's pretty much rogue right now, and he was not really embracing that kind of king role. And you kind of forget that Aquaman is like the king, right, of Atlantis or whatever. So here he's just the dude saving people, just random sailors and stuff like that. So kind of cool to see. I mean, at first, like, it just didn't feel like Aquaman, but then once you get to get to know him a little bit, and especially the Lasso of Truth moment, that was a good little moment. I wish that the movie was filled with more of those moments, as opposed to like random just sitting down talking, pining, whatever. So yeah, but let's get to the Flash because he's my favorite part.
Flash is autistic and has no friends, but he's fast, and he basically serves in the Tom Holland as Spider-Man role. And I would be curious to see what his solo movie looks like because, again, I think if you tone his character down just a little bit, I think it'll work so much better. I think there is the potential for quips and for having some fun with this. I don't know. I'm not necessarily either for or against. I'm pretty neutral on the Flash in this movie conceptually. I think there are a couple good moments, but I think the character itself is written to be a little bit annoying, and I think that's kind of a byproduct of the fact that you have not gotten to know the Flash or Cyborg or any of these characters really. Batman and Superman have been unlikable. Wonder Woman's really the only one that has had a likable solo movie, but there really isn't a lot of there, and that's what happens when you get this movie where you're supposed to care about all these characters and be invested, and you're really not.
See, for me, like, I think what happened is because I'm a big, fan of the Flash series on the CW. So for me, like, I was already familiar with all the beats and stuff, and him talking to his dad in the prison. I was like, oh, they're doing the season one stuff. So for me, like, I was like, that was kind of like my origin movie, solo movie build up for the Flash in this movie. So to see him different, like, I liked it because in the show he's like this, this noble fucking, dude who always tries to do the right thing and blah blah blah, and he has all these friends to support him and blah blah blah. And here it's the complete opposite. And I think they did that specifically to do the complete opposite of what the show is, and I like that. And yeah, he is slightly on the spectrum. We don't know how far on the spectrum is, but on the spectrum he is, but he's definitely on the spectrum. He admits it by saying he doesn't pick up social cues, right? So obviously that's a cue right there. But still, like, it's this cool. I like this interpretation of him because he just seems like this guy that, like, he doesn't know how to handle himself, and like he's got all these powers, but he's trying to get his dad out. Like, that's the heart of like the season one storyline. So I was in for that. So I like the setup, and I desperately want that Flash movie because I want to relive all that stuff that I loved about season one and two again, but see it in a different light and hopefully have a different outcome than what happens to his dad. Spoiler alert: he dies in season two, but he did get out of jail. He's proven innocent. But I want to see that whole journey again, and the concept of Flashpoint that they were talking about as well. That's another big thing. So there's a lot you can do with the Flash, and I really like this. This is like my highest point of this movie is this Ezra Miller version of the Flash, and I enjoy it a lot. And I couldn't help but laugh at all his shtick, like especially the stuff with Batman when he at the beginning. Like I couldn't help it, man. I guess I don't know, see myself in the Flash in this version maybe a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I'm not on the spectrum, but you know what I mean. Just like that nerdy kind of kid. You know what I mean? And then the stuff with like Rick and Morty in the background in his cave, in his Flash cave, I'll call it. I thought that was a nice little touch too.
I always forget that both Jeremy Irons and J.K. Simmons are in this movie, as they are both completely wasted. I mean, J.K. Simmons, who of course plays J. Jonah Jameson in four Spider-Man movies now, I can't believe that he was Jim Gordon and he gets literally nothing to do. And I understand that they were setting it up for a solo Batman movie, but it is inexplicable to me that you cast J.K. Simmons in this role and have him do zilch.
Well, to be honest, it didn't even need Gordon anyway. They just had him there to like, oh my God, it's Jim Gordon, kind of thing, and that's all they really wanted. And it didn't need to be in it. He didn't need to be in it at all. Like, you could have done everything else. He didn't need to be on the roof to talk to Batman. He really didn't need to do that. They didn't even need to talk to him at all, man. They could have just done their thing.
Amy Adams and Diane Lane also collected a paycheck as they were in a couple scenes as Lois Lane. Lois is the quote-unquote big gun here. You've got Billy Crudup, Joe Morton, and Amber Hill, Amber Heard filling out the cast. I mean, they almost get nothing to do. Yet somehow I still think this is better than any other DC EU movie, because at least the Justice League is trying to save people. They're trying to do the right thing, and even though they can still be cynical at times, they're not complete assholes, and that makes a difference for me. So that is why I am giving this a score of 5.
Originally, my plan was to give this a 6, but god damn that Ezra Miller Flash, man. He just made me smile throughout. I do have my criticisms of Cyborg. I don't think he deserves to be in the movie at all. At least until like if they do another Justice League, that's when I would have introduced him. But I'm gonna go with a surprising 7, and that's the highest you'll get out of me at any of these scores.
Let's talk about the villains, because it's not going to take very long. They are generic in the way they're created, the way they're rendered. The dialogue is all completely generic. It feels like a Justice League animated movie, if not worse. Steppenwolf has a vague plan of conquering the world, but his dialogue is perfunctory. But the good news is, Brian, the Justice League doesn't murder him. He gets murdered by his own henchmen. And that's a good thing, because I don't want to see the Justice League murder anyone. We've already seen Batman do it. We've already seen Superman do it. Let's leave the murdering out of this.
Yeah, and a couple of weeks ago we just saw Lion King, and of course they redid the ending of that one from the original. And what was the ending of Lion King? The hyenas eating Scar. So what do they do here? The hyenas eating Scar. No, they had the parademons eat Steppenwolf, man. I was like, why does this seem so familiar? Like, oh my god, this is the Lion King, because I just saw this weeks ago.
Shouldn't they have eaten Jeremy Irons' Alfred in this case?
I know. I was about to mention. You stole my thunder. You stole my thunder on that one, man. But yeah, just it was just such a Lion King ending. But especially the stuff with the fear. You know what I mean? Like I was like, why does that sound familiar too? Because I think they mentioned how much Scar feared the hyenas at that point in Lion King anyway. So I was just blown away. And then Steppenwolf is just so poorly thought out, and I just feel like I can't believe that was the idea. It was like we're gonna drag this out. We're gonna try to make a low key out of this guy, and then we're gonna build up to our Thanos. But he didn't have the charisma to do it, and they picked the wrong guy to voice it, and the CGI wasn't even finished. It looked like, so yeah, total burial. But at least the parademons were kind of cool to see because, I mean, we really never seen that before. I've seen them in the cartoon, so that was kind of cool, and they kind of made jokes out of them, kind of like the putties in Power Rangers, or like the foot in Ninja Turtles. So I like that kind of concept about them. But other than that.
You're very generous. I'm giving this a 2.
I'm going with a 2 as well. I almost went with a 1, but I like the henchman stuff with the parademons. So, and they made fun of the green slime.
All right, the story, thankfully, is much easier to go through. You could tell I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this movie, so we're just going to breeze through the rest of these categories. Steppenwolf is looking for a series of MacGuffins. They are literally in boxes. They are literally in boxes. Batman tries to put a team of metahumans together. He's not exactly Nick Fury. The movie gets very orange at the end. There are numerous gratuitous ass shots, but I still think this movie is much more digestible since everyone doesn't hate each other, exhibit bitterness about the world, but it's still not great. And like I said, it's very orange at the end.
Not to mention the 20-minute sequence in the middle where they bring back Superman to life, which I thought was a cool. That was cool. Like I'll give it that. Like that was a cool concept, and the idea that like Diana was like, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't raise people from the dead. And then when Batman goes, we don't even know if he's dead. I was like, that's a good point. He's probably not even dead. He's probably just waiting for some kind of like sunlight or something, to some radiation or something. But I did like the idea of them bringing him back from the dead. That was pretty interesting. Third act, it's crap though because, like I said, it's Sokovia all over again, minus the whole picking up the town and dropping it. But it's like they did the Battle of New York mixed with Sokovia, but they purposely picked a town that was abandoned so they didn't have to do that whole thing about endangering people to avoid that problem. But the CGI was so bad because they had to coat the whole cloud with like this reddish orange that just was like visually not appealing at all. So I mean, the third act is fairly hard to watch visually. It has a cool moment with like Jason Momoa and him going down and riding that dude like a surfboard all the way down to the fucking ground, and then doing his thing. But it would have been better if that was in daylight. You could see what's going on. But it is what it is in the third act.
I think it's remarkable to watch this sequence versus the Battle of New York, which is very similar in a lot of ways because the Avengers in that scene are just beating up a bunch of random CGI villains. But that scene just feels like it's so much more. It feels like there was real time and consideration. And of course, you start off with that iconic shot, and that I think really helps it. Just the way that that is executed, it's so much better here. You don't even get really the big hero Justice League shot. You get kind of one, but Batman doesn't have his mask on, and this movie just feels like it's incomplete, and it feels like it's trying to do two or three things in one. Like, to me, you end the movie with bringing back Superman, and the first half hour of the next movie is trying to bring him back. But in here, they're just doing it in, like, one 15 to 20 minute sequence, and it just doesn't work out. And for all those reasons, I'm giving the story a 5, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that it again is much more digestible. There are some fun sequences and some fun jokes among the characters. I think my the Aquaman scene with the lasso of truth is a good one. I did like the Wonder Woman action scene at the beginning. Even the Batman scene at the beginning I thought was pretty well done. But just a lot of the things that have to do with the actual plot of the movie don't really work, and I can't really give higher than a 5 for that reason.
I'm gonna go one lower. I'm gonna go 4, and I'm gonna tie in that cyborg thing because like it just felt like they used him specifically to explain all this mother box shit in order to connect them all, and he's gonna be the one to pull them apart at the end. I'm gonna shout out Mark Bernardin. He's the guy who co-hosts Fat Man Beyond with Kevin Smith. When the movie came out, he actually came up with this great idea. Like, why wasn't the mother box absorbed with Cyborg? And the idea is that in order to like save the world, they have to kill Cyborg and get it out of him. That would have been the ultimate sacrifice, right? That would have been something more build up to and like, holy shit, we got to kill this guy in order to save the world. Like, do we do this kind of thing? That's like a much complex story. And
Well, I think the one of the issues with that is then you are, because you have no other representation in this character, you're taking the one black superhero and you're killing him. And I think that would have actually gotten even more criticism than what you just said. From a storytelling perspective, I don't disagree with you, but again, this is the problem when you only have one black character is that he then represents everything and you have nothing else. Like if you had a Green Lantern as Jon Stewart, then maybe you could do that and get away with it. But I mean, the criticisms for this movie, the knives were out from critics already, and if you do that, then you're just going to piss more people off. And I don't even know if that's the reason they wouldn't have done something like that. I don't even know if they had thought of that idea, but I could definitely see that there would have been even more criticism.
well, that's my shout out to Mark Bernardin because he's always rebooking stuff and coming up with better ideas than the actual movie makers themselves. So I wanted to bring that up because I always thought that was a great kind of concept to play with. Also, for the story, like I got to shout out the one scene where they do the flashback to the original Lord of the Ring S battle, where all the worlds of men come together, and the Amazonians and the Atlanteans and all of men coming together, and the Green Lantern stuff. That was a cool tie-in. I kind of marked out really hard for that. It's like, oh my god, are we gonna get a lantern in this movie at the end popping out? And we didn't get that. So, but I'd love that little nod to that. And I could have sworn there was like a small Black Adam kind of tie-in in that battle, but maybe I just made that up in my head.
All right, let's get to the technical aspects, which I think is really going to be just nailed because the score for this movie is not very good. Doesn't make sense to use the old Batman and Superman themes this time around. The editing is very choppy, and the movie does not look well rendered. I've talked about the look of the third act, even though there's some individual moments that work. I appreciate that they're trying to save people with Flash, and that humorous moment of him saving the one family where Superman has just saved an entire apartment building's worth of people. I think there are certainly the moments, but the technical aspects in particular I don't think are very good, and that's why I'm giving this a 3.
Yeah, all those reasons too. The score's weak. I really criticized the third act, the look of that whole third act, and the Steppenwolf is not a really thought well designed character. Yeah, they took him from the comics, but you could have done so much more with that. It just looked so generic, and his face was just so plain and white. It didn't fit at all, and of course the voice acting just didn't fit. So um, my score is gonna be a 6. You gotta appreciate the stuff in the modern era because like the stuff with like Gotham City looked good. You know what I mean? Like that stuff looked good. The parademons I thought looked good, but all this other stuff that seemed to go by the wayside in terms of this, like the CGI and stuff. And you gotta criticize the mustache because no matter how much money they spent on it, it's just blatantly obvious and it's clearly so distracting. And right off the bat, like I mentioned, that scene with the kids, like I love the concept of that scene. Like you're right, that's a good way to start the movie to show Superman's heart and character. But it just threw me off because I was like, I'm staring right at the fucking mustache.
Right. For that reason alone, I don't see how you could give that higher than a 5.
Well, like I said, modern movies like still have these great technical achievements, and like I just love the look of Gotham City, the way they kind of did it in this movie. So even for those 10 minutes, and the fact that they got even though they kind of wasted J.K. Simmons, like I still marked out over the fact that he had like the mustache and the glasses and that look, and that and the even the office looks so old school. I was like, God, that office just looks so old school Batman, like straight out of the animated series kind of thing. So I like that.
All right, The Legacy. This movie, it came out less than 2 years ago, and it has been completely forgotten. I guess it kind of set up Aquaman and a potential Flashpoint movie. It has kind of ended, quote unquote, this version of the DCEU as they've gone in a much different direction. I don't think this movie is as much of a bomb as people have suggested it to be. It did make $229 million dollars in the United States, which is not very good given its budget of about $250 million. Dollars. It did make over $600 million dollars worldwide. I don't know if it necessarily turned a profit for Warner Brothers, but this is not a bomb. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not a fan of this movie by any means, but I don't want to classify this as a bomb when it really isn't.
Yeah, and they're streaming it all over the place. It's on HBO right now, on just playing it all over. I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be on like a TNT next year, just playing over and over again. So I feel like it's going to be one of those TV movies because it's that perfect time frame, 2 hours. They're going to cut the 15 minutes out for the time restraints and everything, and it's just going to play on TV for the next 5 years. So I think that's going to be its legacy. Um, it's not going to be known for the score for sure. I think it's going to be known for the problems going in. So with all that, like my legacy score is going to be a 5. It's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. But it did set up Aquaman. It did set up the Wonder Woman sequel and all these other things, and the potential Flash movie that I'm really looking forward to. And I hope to God Ezra Miller stays because I love this version of Flash. So there you go. And um, it's kind of weird because like I bought the movie for $5 on a Black Friday, and it seems like every one of these movies in the DCEU right now is like a $5 Black Friday type of movie, and I kind of get that, but I kind of see this as like the end of like Phase One, and it's like at this point no one knew if there was going to be a Phase Two, but then they had like Shazam ready to go and Aquaman ready to go, so we're pretty much in Phase Two right now, and this is the end of Phase One, and no one's really calling it that because obviously that's an MCU thing to say, but it kind of is.
Right. My legacy score is a 4, and my total score is a 19. So that puts us at a 43, which is not horrible. So this is basically the end of the so-called Phase 1 of the DCEU. And it's worth pointing out, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice made more money than this. Wonder Woman made more money than this. Aquaman made way more money than this. And domestically, even Shazam did better than this. So it is a fascinating piece of film history. You've got Joss Whedon bringing the Avengers and the Justice League to film. But even for Joss Whedon, this was kind of the end of his run as a superhero filmmaker. And I know that he is developing and working on a show for HBO, but it very much feels like he is going into a different phase, pun not intended, of his career. So it's just an interesting product to look back on and understand, this was made 2 years ago, but it kind of feels irrelevant.
A little bit, but because I think that Aquaman is such a success that it still kind of matters. You know what I mean? Like it's still like it happened. Like it still happened in the universe that we're watching now in the DCU in Phase Two, quote unquote. So we can't necessarily ignore it because it is canon, but at least they can kind of go from here and kind of maybe make fun of it down the line and kind of poke fun of it when they do it. They got to do another Justice League movie eventually, right? So, but they're gonna take some time with that. They got to do it right, but it wouldn't be surprising if they kind of poke fun of it kind of a little bit.
All right, with all that in mind, let's get to the burning questions. I've asked this for every DCEU movie up to this point. Who is the most wasted actor?
I'll go with J.K. Simmons, I guess, because I felt like you didn't even need Gordon in this movie at all, and you just casted him in there to just kind of like tease what's to come, and it might not even come at all. Because like I don't even know if he's actually going to be Gordon in the Batman, right? Like, is that official?
I do not think that he is going to end up playing Gordon because it's supposedly a younger version of Batman, and I have to imagine it's going to be a younger version of Gordon as well. So I don't think it's going to be J.K. Simmons. And if J.K. Simmons is going to be in the MCU, I don't think it makes sense to have him then be Gordon in Batman.
Exactly. So that's my most wasted actor because I felt like you didn't even need him anyway. So what was the point?
I just don't understand why Amy Adams is in this movie. I joked that this is not the only time that was not the only time I was going to answer Amy Adams. So I'm going to stick with my answer here. I was going to go with J.K. Simmons, but you have it, so I'm going to say Amy Adams again because you have her cast as Lois Lane, and yet she gets less to do in these three movies than Margot Kidder did in the three Superman movies that she was in. It's pretty embarrassing, quite frankly, to understand that this is an Academy Award nominated performer as well as Emmy nominated performer, and you're just doing nothing with her. I mean, for God's sake, she was on Smallville. She guest starred on an episode of Smallville. She has a legacy in this universe, damn it.
Yeah, and apparently she's really thirsty.
Yeah, at least she was on that episode. Should there be a cyborg movie?
I want to say no because based on what we got here, I'm not that interested, man. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the performance of the guy that plays Cyborg, Ray Fisher. It was kind of lifeless, but I don't know if that's because Snyder directed him to be so lifeless. And I get that, but I gotta watch Doom. He's in Doom Patrol, right? This character.
Not this actor, but this character is a part of Doom Patrol, and it's much better.
That's what I want. That's why I want to see Doom Patrol. I haven't watched it yet, but I think this is gonna kind of convince me because I feel like I kind of shat on his version of this character in Justice League, but it is what it is. Like that's the way it felt like. But I feel like maybe if I just seen a different light, I like the character more.
Do you want to see a Flashpoint movie? Because I think this is crucial for the future is to kind of reset things and to do a Flashpoint movie. I think this is almost necessary to kind of reset this universe. So I'm really hoping they do it.
Yeah, we immediately talked about that, me and my buddies, because like once we saw, because me and my friends are big like Flash fans, like the series. So in season three, when they did that Flashpoint thing at the beginning of the season, right? And they kind of teased that. My friend was like, "Dude, this is how they can fix the DCU. Like, they can do a Flashpoint movie, and then when he comes back, Batman can be different, and then he could be like, it'd be like a joke to him, but everyone around the world will just be like, yo, that's Batman. What are you talking about?" So I think that's what they could probably do. That's how they'll replace the actors in Batman and Superman. Even though I would pay the money to Henry Cavill and bring him back because at least that's a recognize. Like you need some kind of like continuity from that, and I think at least get one of the two to come back. It's probably not going to be Affleck at all at this point, even though I really want him back. But Flashpoint, I desperately want that movie because like it's such a great concept anyway, and I love the animated movie. So I think there's a lot of Back to the Future type storytelling you can do there. That's great.
What is Joss Whedon's legacy in superhero filmmaking? I think he almost deserves to go into a Hall of Fame just for getting the Avengers to the screen. And I think that's kind of where it almost should stop because Avengers Age of Ultron certainly has its fans. It certainly has a lot of issues, but that combined with the Justice League, I think his reputation has been hurt just a little bit. And again, there have been some accusations that have been made about him. He also mentioned not being able to quote unquote crack a story for Batgirl, which I find to be utterly absurd.
Yeah, to me, it's like I don't know, like his track record kind of reminds me of like a George Lucas. I know that's kind of weird, but like, you know how like it was like American Graffiti and then A New Hope, and then after that, his directing efforts were not as great, but he's still known as like a good storyteller. You know what I'm saying? Like he had a good track record with Avengers, right? And then everything kind of went downhill in terms of directing after that.
Well, you also have to remember the fact that he's also got the TV shows as well. He's got three critically acclaimed TV shows that really did not have huge audiences. He had Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and the ultimate example of that is Firefly.
Oh, I forgot about Firefly. You're right. And I love that. So yeah, it's just I guess it's kind of like George Lucas where it's just like he got lightning in a bottle a couple times and then once a little more and then you get your episode 1s of the world and then episode 1 and 2 are kind of like Avengers in this. So or Avengers Age of Ultron in this. So that's the way I kind of see it. I think he can get back on the horse and, maybe have like an M Night Shyamalan moment and have a comeback, but it's going to take some time. Maybe he's got to do something more original stuff and maybe step away from the superhero stuff.
I think that's what he's trying to do with HBO. I will be very curious to see what that show looks like. And before making any final judgments on his career, I definitely want to see what that show looks like. What is Zack Snyder's legacy within the DCEU? Because for me, it's not good. I mean, I understand he certainly does have his fans. He has very passionate fans, but those are not the kind of people that I would want to associate myself with. And I think even though he has made financially successful movies, I think he has made movies that a lot of people detest, and I think it has turned a lot of people, especially the a more diverse crowd. I think they are much more into Marvel than they are DC, and I think that's a huge problem because I look at the Avengers, and the Avengers feel like the A team, and the Justice League kind of feel like the B team now.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate with his legacy, and it's going to be a negative legacy with me. Even though I do have, I mean, I like Man of Steel a lot. I like the elements of Batman versus Superman or it's Batman stuff, but yeah, it's unfortunate, and you can kind of tell like throughout these three movies he directed, it kind of wore him down and pretty much almost like made him not made him crazy, but like it just really wore him down. You can tell the quality of each movie was just kind of getting away from him from what he originally intended, I think. And I think all these outside forces just kind of like brought it down with him. So it sucks, and he needs to step away from the directing chair a little bit. I know he's got a new movie coming out with I think Batista's in it or something, but if he's gonna do a DC anything related, he's got to have that producer role. And just kind of like be that and just help with the visual and that's kind of it and the storytelling let someone else do it.
That's what I would certainly hope. And thankfully, we are going to step away from the DCEU forever, never talk of those films again. And next week, we are going to have some fun. We are going to go back to 2018. There was a movie that we did not talk about at all that I really liked. It is Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Brian did not see this last year, but we are going to rectify that next week. We are going to review Teen Titans Go to the Movies. And Brian, I know that you regret not seeing that movie last year, and I know you're excited to review it next week.
Yeah, because I've actually, every now and then I'll watch the show, and yeah, it's kind of stupid, and it's for like a certain kid's audience, but every now and again, man, they'll have some zingers and some real deep cuts for the adults that happen to be watching at the time. So I'm looking forward to that, and from what I've heard, it's full of those and a lot of poking around at other different franchises and making fun of certain things. So I'm looking forward to that, and I know it's a kids movie, whatever, but sometimes kids movies really hit because there's a lot of hidden stuff and a lot of hidden meanings.
All right, so for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening this week. We will talk to you again next week to discuss, again, Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
I got no funny lines for this one. It's Justice League.